Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. In this video, we're going to look at the IPA, or International Phonetic Alphabet. So we'll look at the vowel sounds and consonant sounds and how these can be represented by one symbol. If you're familiar with my work, you've been watching our videos, and I use IPA to help you with the sounds. I also like using alternative spelling so you can visualize these sounds, but IPA is very useful because it exists not only for English, but all of the languages of the world. So you can take any language and show the sounds. It's not an alphabet for how we spell, it's an alphabet for what we hear. And so it's useful to spend a little time learning it, especially with the vowel sounds, but sometimes also consonant sounds. You can get detailed help with each of the sounds of English in our videos for each sound and in our Sounds of English course. But today, let's walk you through the vowel and consonant sounds for the IPA. So you see here that I'm just modeling that the letter I has the sound I, and this is how we represent that sound in IPA. The letter P has a sound P and E, P, that's how we spell it. And then the letter A is the diphthong A, and that's how we write it. So IPA just stands for International Phonetic Alphabet. Taking a look, you can see in the corner we have our Vowel Quadrangle. And in our Vowel Challenge series and our Vowels playlist, we use the Vowel Quadrangle to talk about the vowel sounds. And so it's basically the shape, you can see, is meant to represent the shape of our mouth. So of course, our mouth doesn't have exactly this type of shape, like you see there on the board. But this is meant to be the front, the back, the bottom, the top. And the vowel sounds are all about the position of the tongue in the mouth. So when I'm saying E, the high front vowel, which is the symbol for it is this, the E sound is made up near the front of my mouth with very little space there. So often I introduce the idea of E versus Ah. Ah is called an open back vowel. So where we see the Ah symbol and the E symbol represents how the tongue is and how we make these sounds. E, there's just a little tiny space near the front. If you say it with me, you might be able to visualize E. My tongue fills up all of this space in my mouth, and there's a little tiny space for the sound to happen. Versus Ah, you can feel the mouth is open, the tongue is down and out of the way. Ah, there's a great big amount of space for that Ah sound to happen. So those are two of the extremes in the English language for the E and the Ah. And those are sounds that are in most other languages as well. So starting with the E sound, we have the letter lowercase I represents the sound of E. You'll see on my chart that I also like to have anchor words for the vowel sounds. So for E, I choose green tea because we often spell E with letter E, but also with letters EE or EA. And it's a high front vowel, it's also tense. So if you want to learn more details about the vowel sounds, how they're spelled, what words they're in, accent error patterns you may have, check out our individual videos for each of the sounds and check out our Sounds of English course to walk you through that. Today we're going to just be looking at the symbols, what they mean, what sounds they are, so that you can understand the IPA. So next down on our chart, you can see underneath green tea, we have pink pig. This is the vowel sound that we often spell with letter I, and the symbol for it is a small uppercase I. So the E and the I are two sounds that are useful to know which one has which. For example, we may want to be able to distinguish between leave and live. Many times these two sounds are close in your ear. You might have some difficulty. So if you can look up in the dictionary and determine what the letter is saying. If I look up leave in the dictionary, I'm going to see this with my E symbol for green tea. And if I look up live in the dictionary, I'm going to see this with my I symbol for pink pig. So simply being able to identify what you're hearing, what vowel sound is in a word, the IPA is going to be very helpful for that. I will say different dictionaries have different symbol systems. They don't all use the IPA, so you want to check the guide in your dictionary that will show you, it's the pronunciation guide, it'll show you what symbols they use. If you learn the IPA, that will be useful for a lot of resources that do use IPA. So those are our first two vowels. We have the E and the I vowel. And if you move down, we're still in the front part of the vowel quadrangle that you can see there in the chart. And if you see that we have E for green tea, I for pink pig, and then our next vowel in the front, we have the E vowel. That's in words like red and tent. And this is a lax vowel, It's often not in languages besides English, and so this is one of the ones that you may want to work on distinguishing. For example, we have the vowel in men, and then our a vowel in man. So this is another vowel pair that people have challenges with. Our a vowel, like in black cat, those are the anchor words that I use for those. So again, the symbol for the sound and the a sound. Typically when I'm writing these, if I'm respelling a word, for example, I will use a for a. That's the most common way we spell it. And I will use e for or sometimes eh, for the e vowel, I'll write it as ee. And for the I vowel, I'll write it as I or IH. So that's some of the alternative spelling that I use. I tend to use the IPA symbol and alternative spelling in my videos because often one or the other makes more sense to people. I want to give you both options. Today, focusing on the a and the e sounds, we'll look at those symbols. And then our next vowel, we also have the a vowel. I write it like this on the IPA, on the vowel quadrangle. If you see it in the dictionary, you'll see A. And that's what I had written under A for IPA because the letter A is pronounced as the diphthong A. So even though we have two symbols here, it's one sound. So A is made as we slide from the position of the E vowel, which we don't have in English, to the I vowel that we do have in English. So I use an arrow to indicate A. That's a gliding diphthong vowel. The E, the I, the E, and the A, those are what are called monophthong vowels. There's just one position, we don't move. When I say li, iv, or I, it, my tongue doesn't have to move, but if I say A, ate, my tongue is gliding and that vowel sound is made by movement. So that's what's called a diphthong. And then we usually just say vowel sound, but we can also say monophthong for vowels that don't glide or move. So in the front, we have our E, I, A, and A vowels, and those are the symbols for them. If you're trying to master the IPA, you may want to identify a few vowels that are problematic for you in terms of pronunciation and learn those. You might also find it helpful, like I did, to have some anchor words so that you can remember that E is green tea and I is pink pig. Or you can choose your own anchor words. I often like to choose words that represent the way we commonly spell these sounds. So for A, the A diphthong, I use gray day because we often spell it with a Y or AI, like in rain. You can choose your own anchor words, but I like to have reminders of what vowel sound, how we typically spell that in English, making that association, learning to help with spelling and help with sounds. So those are our front vowels. Then we also have back vowels that happen more in the back of the mouth. So we have our oo sound, as in blue shoe. This is actually usually typically spelled with OO. So blue and shoe aren't the best examples. We also spell it with EW, like in new. But I didn't choose OO because we also use that spelling for the vowel, which can be kind of confusing. So our vowel, I call that one good book. We also spell it with OU, like in could, and U like in push. So this one is tense, and this one is lax. And again, you can learn more about that in my videos for oo and and my contrast videos for those. But you can see in the vowel quadrangle that they happen in the back, and that oo is slightly higher and is a little bit less high. And oo is tense and is lax. And then we have another gliding vowel. Our O in English is another diphthong like the A. A lot of languages have just O with no closing. In English, we typically close O and glide as we say that sound. I call that one no snow. We often spell it with letter O, sometimes with OW. And I also tend to write it with OH in my alternative spelling to make it clear, since sometimes OW can say ow, which is a different vowel than O. For good book, I will spell it with OU or U depending on the alternate word, and for blue shoe, I typically spell it with OO for my alternate spelling. Okay, also in the back, we have our aw vowel, like in caught law. This one is rounded but lax, and it's a little bit more open than our O. And finally, we have our ah vowel, like in not hot. I spell this one or write it in alternative spelling with AH because many languages have letter A for ah. We do have a few words like father or pasta that we spell the ah vowel with letter A. Most of the time, however, we spell the ah vowel with letter O. So as you're learning the symbols, you might find it confusing, or you might actually find it more helpful to see this letter A, ah, for that sound, because it matches your native language. But then when it comes to English, you have to remember that the IPA for a word like not is going to look like that. And when you see that, you might be thinking nat, the ah sound, because we often spell A with ah. So making a difference between IPA, the sound, versus the letters, the spelling, is an important distinction to make in your mind. I hope this video will help you with that. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you look at our videos for individual sounds and our lessons about the vowel sounds, that can really help clear up what sounds you're hearing versus what sounds there are. So we're going to continue with more vowel sounds in English and move to the consonants as well. I do want to mention for the ah that there's a sound, a symbol, this symbol, which is aw, which we don't have in English, and I probably didn't do a great job of making that sound. That's the British English that they use in words like not and hot. We say not and hot, unrounded. They say not and hot, rounded. So it's in the same bottom corner of the vowel quadrangle. It's just would be the rounded version. And for many of the vowels you see in our vowel quadrangle, your language may also have a rounded version. So for example, in English, we just have E, and some languages have Ü, which is a rounded version of the E, which we don't use in English. So again, I'm just showing you the IPA for the English, American English vowels. You can learn more about your the symbols and the vowel quadrangle from your language, because that shape is used in other languages as well. There'd just be different symbols for the sounds of that language. Okay, so we've done the front vowels and the back vowels. Now if we look in the middle, we have our most common sound in English, which is vowel schwa. And you'll see that there are two symbols there in the middle. There's this one and this one. And depending on whose vowel quadrangle you look at, they might be in slightly a different place. They're close together though, because they both typically have this sound. We just use this one for when the vowel is unstressed. So in a word like above, for example, IPA will be above, and we have the stress falls on the second sound, and we use this symbol for the stressed schwa. So we have stressed and unstressed schwa. This is unstressed. And we often find this in, it can be very, very reduced. For example, in a word like person, we will see we have person. sun. We have this symbol, or they might even put it in the dictionary with nothing for the vowel. Person, sun, sun. You can hear this is really not clear, versus in the word sun, we'll have the stressed schwa. So this sun and this sun sound the same. Another reason knowing IPA can be helpful is that when I look at these two, I might think they sound different because of how they're spelled. When I look in the dictionary and I see this, if I recognize this symbol as the sound, the schwa sound, that can help me justify or rectify the different spelling for different words with the same sounds in English. So schwa, unstressed and stressed. Again, I talk about this in detail. I have a lot of videos about schwa because that's one that's a very important sound for English, our most used vowel sound, and often a difficult one for non-native speakers to master in English because it may be slightly different in your native language, and it's also spelled with so many different letters. I use the phrase "such fun" for the schwa. Those are our anchor words. Okay. Then you can see off to the side, I also included a spot for the sound. There's a few different symbols for Sometimes I'll write it this way, the sound of like in, I use purple bird for my anchor words for this vowel. You will also see the stressed written this way. That's the from bird. And the unstressed written this way. That's the in paper. Again, the only difference is if I'm saying bird, it's going to be stressed, a little bit longer. Paper, It's the exact same sound. It's just going to be a little bit shorter and unstressed. So these are great symbols. A lot of dictionaries use them. I used to use them. Now in my teaching, I tend to use this, these symbols for the just because I don't, I want to be consistent in showing you that is one sound, and I think having to learn the two symbols can be a little bit tricky. So can be different interpretations of sounds in IPA. I just want to show you all the different ways you'll see Some dictionaries might also just write the consonant R sound. The difference about these three and this one is that these are when R functions like a vowel. So in the word bird or in the word paper, the sound can continue. It's vocalic, versus in a word like rain, I can't really hold that. I just start in the R position and I leave, rain, versus paper or bird, I can hold on that I could hold on this one, but then it would turn into one of these symbols, rain. That would be kind of like rain. Okay, so anyway, details about the R. You can get more help for R in our American R playlist. Lots of videos about the R. Today we're just looking at the symbols. This is the one that I use. You'll also see these symbols for the R sound. And then you'll see as well in the, sorry, I was a little bit off under the chart there. So bird, paper, rain. You'll also see then I have the diphthongs listed. So we talked about A and O. Those are kind of more basic vowels that we think of like with A and O. Symbols A and O. Those are small movements, but they are diphthongs. And then the other ones are slightly bigger. So we have the I, which I call the white light. It starts more open and then closes, I. And then we have the ow, also starts more open. I use brown cow for this one. And then we also have oi. I use noisy boy for this one. So spelled with OI or OY, different spellings. We have the I, the ow, and the oi. Again, they slide. I'm not on this chart that you can see here, but another chart I'll show you with arrows how they move. Even though you see two symbols, it's one sound. So I'm not saying an ah and an I here. I'm saying I. It's a sound that happens when I move from the position of approximately the ah to the I. Same thing with ow and oi. I'm not really saying an ah and an I here. It's not ah, I, it's oi. So it's kind of the sound that happens as I move between two positions. And by that I mean if I have the quadrangle, for example, here's the ah. We have the ah in English, and then we start here for our diphthongs. When I say I, my tongue position starts here and then lifts. So it's more open and central, and then it moves to being more closed and in the front. Okay, again, you can get help for those individual vowel sounds in our vowels playlist videos, and then I do highly recommend our Sounds of English course as we walk you through all of these sounds, how they're spelled, the IPA symbols, the accent error patterns you may have, a lot more details, what words they're in to really help build that sound. So we had our 16 vowel sounds. We also have some R diphthongs. So we had our just basic sound, right, which I marked this way. You also see it this way. And then while we're in the vowels, we also have the or, which you'll see either this way or this way. I use this one, but in the dictionary it's often they use the ah plus the but it sounds like or. You'll also see this or this for the ear. And then we have air, and we have ire, so that's more of a triphthong, like ire. We have our, another triphthong. And we have r, which I'll write this way with ar or just r. Other diphthongs. Yeah, so you can get help for all of these sounds, the or. We have also like in tour. All of these, I have a separate video talking about our diphthongs, helping you with a similar vowel chart to what you see in our vowel chart, just all kind of centering in on the and you can check that out in our sounds playlist and also in our Sounds of English course. Walk you through the details of those R diphthongs. Basically, if you learn the IPA symbols for the basic vowels, then you might want to learn how they represent the R diphthongs. So now let's move to the consonants of English. So similarly to how we have a quadrangle for the vowels, the consonants can also be sorted by placement. For example, we have bilabial sounds like the P sound that we spell with letter P, the B sound that we spell with letter B, and the M sound that we spell with letter M. So those are all made with both lips, so they're called bilabials. And you can see in our chart, we have the bilabial P and B here. If we scroll down, we can see we have the nasal M sound. So across the top of this chart is what's called the place of articulation, where it happens in the mouth. On the side of this chart, we have the manner and voicing. So manner means what's happening to make the sound. Is it made by restricting air? Is it made by stopping air? Is it made by frication or affrication? Again, if you check out our Sounds of English course, for each different sound, I'll explain what those mean and how those work. This is just a way to look at and sort the sounds. And then we also have voicing, which means we have sounds like the p sound that we spell with letter P, like in paper or pop, doesn't have voicing. So when I say p, there's no vibration in my vocal folds, versus when I say b, this vibrates here. So that's called a voiced sound. So voiced like in Bob versus voiceless like in pop. This is another useful thing to know about. The IPA is not going to show you. You need to learn as you learn the sounds. But again, this has to do with accent error patterns that typically happen. Sometimes they can happen because of voicing. I do have a number of videos about consonants talking about placement and manner and voicing, so you can learn those categories for consonants. Today I just want to go through the sounds. We have 25 consonant sounds in English. So as you can see, the IPA has the symbols, a symbol for each sound, versus the alphabet. We only have 26 letters. We can barely even cover the consonants with that. We have 5 vowel letters and 16 vowel sounds. So therefore, I think learning the symbols that represent the sounds can be pretty helpful. I probably should have said that at the beginning. Okay, so for our bilabials, we have the p, the b, and the m, like in mom. This is a voice sound. It's a continuant sound. These are stop sounds. You can see that in the chart. This chart, I think, you can find in our Sounds of English course, and it's going to talk you through bilabial to lips, labio-dental, lips and teeth, dental teeth, etc. And it gives you example words, the IPA, and examples for the way it's spelled, how it's typically spelled. Looking at a more simplified chart, we can see I've used a similar organization for placement here, but it's going to give you some more simple terms. So let's go through. We've talked about the p, the b, and the m. Let's talk about one more front of the mouth sound with both lips, which is our w sound, like in wow. So often spelled with letter W, but it's also in a word like fuel, wool. It can kind of come between two vowels. So in a word like fuel, you'll see fuel in the dictionary. There's a lot more sounds than there are letters. We have the f, the y, the u, the w, the and the ul for fuel. Some dictionaries might not put this w in there, but it happens as I connect between the oo and the ooh. That gliding w sound happens. But often, most of the time, we spell it with letter W. So these sounds can sometimes be hidden, and if you can read the symbols in the dictionary, you can find those hidden sounds in words where there's no letter really representing what happens, but the sound does happen in the word. Okay, so those are our bilabial sounds. Let's go across the top of the chart now. So we had our p, like letter P in pop. The good thing about the consonants is they are closer to how we spell things. Of course, we aren't consistent with spelling, but we're more consistent with the IPA for consonants and the consonant letters in English than we are for vowels, because we have closer to having enough of them. Of course, again, 26 letters, 20 consonant letters, but 25 consonant sounds. So we're going to have some overlap, and we're not also consistent. We don't always spell the same sounds with the same letters. But you'll probably find the IPA for the consonants a little easier. So the f sound that we have in a word like fit or if, typically spelled with letter F. And then we have the t sound, like in the word taught, typically spelled with letter T. Of course, there's lots of different things we do with T. So while we're here talking about T for taught, I'll also talk about the flap sound. So I often write the flap with a T like this. That's one way we can mark it. It's also written with kind of an R that looks like that. It's called the flap. And it's what we use when we connect T at the end to a vowel, or when the T is between two vowels in the middle of a word. So in a word like water, you'll see me write that as water with that flap T written in the middle. Some dictionaries might show it with an R. Often in English, they just will show it with a regular T. And you have to learn where we flap the T, where we use an unreleased T. So this is a detail showing that it's flapped. That's often not in every dictionary, which is why I try to show you in my videos. So there's our T sound. That's just the basic sound. The voiced version of that is the D sound, like in did. And the T is the voiceless. And then across the top again, we also have our Z sound and our S sound. So our Z sound, like in zip or was, and our S sound, like in sis, for example. I'm looking at my chart to see where my S is and what I used to talk about S. So the s sound, let's see, here's our z sound. Our s voiceless sound is missing from this chart, potentially. It should be in the same place, but voiceless. I guess I just put the z and the s both in here. Okay, and then moving on. So S is fairly straightforward, except that we often have letter S saying the z sound. But again, in the dictionary, if you're looking in the IPA, you can see whether a word says z or s. So for example, if I'm looking at the word yes, in the dictionary, the IPA is going to be y, s, yes. And if I'm looking at was, I'll see it's w, z. So that's a great way, even if you only learn the s and the z symbols, it's a great way to know, does my letter S say the S sound or the Z sound, this or the Z? Is it voiceless or voiced? I talk about this, of course, in many of my videos. I have a number of videos talking about letter S, the sounds S and Z, S and Z, but those are the symbols for them. So hopefully you'll find that useful. Okay, moving on. We have the fricative sh sound. We often spell this with SH or TI or CI. So SH like in shoe, TI like in nation, words with shun, right? CI in words like special. Again, lots of different spellings. If I know that this tall skinny S says sh, I can look in the dictionary and not have an issue knowing how to spell it. It's also spelled with S, right? Like in issue. We're not trying to focus so much on spelling, but more on symbols. But if you don't have examples of how this symbol is spelled, it may not resonate for you. The most typical spelling is SH, and that's what I use in my alternative spelling if I'm teaching you about a word for this symbol. And then more towards the back, we have our k sound. We spell this with letter K or letter C or letters CK, like in kick. And then moving back forward, we had our f sound. That was our voiceless labial-dental. We have our v sound. That's our voiced labial-dental. That's in words like love or in very. Again, we mostly spell these with F and V, so those are fairly straightforward. Our nasal sounds, we have our N sound that we spell with letter N, like in noun. And we have our ng sound, which we typically spell with letters NG, like in thing. But we also can spell with just letter N, like in think. You can learn more about the NG, ng sound spellings in my videos for that. But again, this is a place where it can be helpful for me to see if I'm looking at the word think, I might have thought that I was saying an N and a K sound, but when I see in the dictionary, I can see the symbol for the NG sound, that a word like think, has the ng sound. It's really actually hard to say think, if I do an n lifted in the front. And so it can just help me recognize where I need the ng sound. And if I have a word like thing, or actually, let me give you a different example. A lot of times it's confusing to know what the NG does in the middle of words. So if I look up finger, I'll see I have finger. I have the NG sound plus the g sound, finger. But in a word like singer, I have just singer. So it's not singer, there's just the NG sound. There's no g sound like in finger. So again, IPA saves the day here. Finger, singer. Okay, so much So much to be learned from learning the IPA. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just take it a couple sounds at a time. For a lot of these consonants, as you saw, it's typically the letter and the spelling. So if this is new to you, just you can think about it like NG, and then you can look for it and you can recognize a couple other different ways it's spelled. You can learn more about the sound or the sh sound. Those don't have an equivalent in writing. So there's just a few new ones to learn. A lot of the consonant sounds you'll already recognize. The letter, the IPA is the same as the letter in English or the letter in your native language. Okay. Next, another new one, we have the zh sound. This one doesn't have a very consistent spelling in English. We spell it with letter S, like in visual or measure. We can also spell it with, actually mostly just with letter S. I will rewrite this as ZH because it's the same as the SH sound, but my voice is on. So we had our sh sound, right? For this, the zh sound, it's the same placement and the same manner. It's just voiced rather than voiceless. So again, learning about placement, manner of articulation, and voicing can really help you organize your mind around sounds. And you can see how this letter S doesn't say a Z or an S or an SH in these words. It says the zh sound, which this is the symbol. This is Z with a little tail on it. Again, you can identify that that's a new sound for you, have a few anchor words to recognize where it is, and then that when you're looking up a word in the dictionary that you know something's a little off, you may see the zh sound, and that's going to really help you understand how to pronounce that particular word. Okay, and then we have just more the straightforward, the g sound, like in good or big, often typically spelled with letter G. Okay, moving on, let's look at our TH sounds. We have two different symbols. We have this one, which is in words like thin or both. That's a voiceless TH. And then we have the voiced TH, like in this or breathe. Typically always spelled with letters TH. No difference in the placement or the manner. The only difference is that no vibration, voiced vibration. And often you have an error pattern on these. It may be about placement. So a lot of people will, or about manner. People will stop it instead of letting it flow, letting it be a fricative, or they'll have a fricative, but they'll be too far back and then it'll sound like a s or z sound. So learning about the symbol can help you know where that TH happens. For most of the time, that TH is fairly straightforward in how it's spelled, and just you may need to know whether it's voiced or voiceless, and those symbols will help you with that. Okay, and then we have our ul sound in words like little. I'm not going to get into too much detail about the syllabic L here or the dark or light L. You can check out my videos for that. The symbol you'll see in the dictionary, they're just going to use the ul symbol, the L symbol for that one, for that sound, even though we do articulate that slightly differently in different places in English. You can watch that in the videos. Okay, next we have an affricate sound. So again, this is where we have two symbols, but it's one sound. This is the ch sound, like in church. And it's the reason it's this symbol, similar to how our diphthongs, where we're making a movement to make this sound. The ch starts with our tongue in the position it is for the t sound, then it drops to the position it is for the sh sound. So this is not a t plus a sh, except that it kind of is. It's us saying the t and the sh all at once. Ch, ch. It's that movement that's created as we make, it's that sound that's created as we make that movement between the two sounds. I talk about this in detail in my video for the ch sound, but this is another one that might be helpful for you to learn, because often some people have a difficulty telling the difference between, for example, chip and ship. So that has to do with placement and manner. And in the dictionary, you'll be able to look up and see, okay, this is a ch and this one's a sh, based on what you're looking for. The spelling will tell you sometimes, but there are some considerations where something is spelled with a letter S or letters TI, and it's really not clear which sound you should be making. So example would be like in question, we have question. We have the s, question, and the ch, question. So that can help me know that, okay, this TI says ch rather than sh. Yes, okay. A few more consonants to go. Thanks for bearing with me as we work our way through the entire IPA. Again, I know there's a lot more details to learn, a lot more things that you may have questions about. Feel free to leave comments with your questions. I'll direct you to resources on my website and here on the channel where you can find more information about the sounds you have questions about or that you're curious about. And I appreciate your feedback and comments and questions. It helps me know what to cover in future videos for you. Okay, we talked about our ng sound, our th sound, our th sounds, our s sound. We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about vowels. So this is the r sound at the start of words or sometimes in the middle. So in a word like ready, usually it's just at the start of words because in the middle the r is usually vocalic. The only time it wouldn't be would be in something like railroad, where this R starts a new syllable. It's kind of a compound word. Otherwise, you're going to see more of an or an R, etc. in the middle of words. So this is the consonant R, the R, like ready, railroad. Okay, and then one more kind of funky one. That's another affricate. This is basically the J sound that we spell with J, or GE or DGE. It's in words like just, or age, or edge. Again, useful to learn the symbol because it tells you in these words with all these different spellings, it's the same sound, even though we represent it differently in different parts of the word. And it can show you, again, it's an affricate. So one sound, but two symbols, because just like the ch, it moves from the position of the D to the position of the J. So if you remember with ch, my CH sound, my ch sound, this one's voiceless and this one's voiced. These are just the same positions. D, D, and T, T. Both are made the same way, same place of articulation, same manner of articulation. The J and the Sh, same position as well. The only difference between these two is voicing. So this one is voiced, this one is voiceless. J and ch are the only difference between them is voicing. So same thing with d and t and j and sh. So the symbols can kind of teach you a little bit about manner, placement, voicing, all of those things that can help you then correct accent error patterns you may have or difficulties you might find. Oh, I never realized I had the same problem with this sound, or exactly what pattern was happening for you in your speech. Learning IPA can be very illuminating when it comes to some of that, especially in conjunction with learning about your accent error patterns, which is something that I teach you in my videos as well as in our American Accent 6-week course. I'll walk you through the basic patterns that typically will happen because of your native language and because of the sounds that are in your native language versus the sounds that are in English. Of course, everyone has some individual differences, but a lot of it, most of it comes from your native language not translating over into English because of not having matching sounds or having sounds used with different rules. So you may have the same sounds in your language, but they're not used the same way as they are in English. Okay, last couple sounds. We have our sound, which we typically spell with letter H, like in hot, and rarely spell with WH, like in who. So that's kind of nice to know. If I look up who, I'm going to see that in the dictionary. And so if you were thinking you had to do something different for that WH there, it's just the sound. And then lastly, our y sound. Looks like a J, but it is, we spell it with letter Y, like in yes or yellow. And for Spanish speakers, this one can be helpful because you may have a tendency to think of the J sound. So this sound J we spell with J, and this is the symbol. This sound Y, the symbol is a J, but the sound is a Y that we spell with Y. And Spanish speakers have a tendency to interchange those two. And so that's just a typical error pattern that when you know which sound you're supposed to be saying and how to pronounce that sound, it can be very helpful. Let me just double check and make sure. I think we covered all 25 consonant sounds. You stuck with it for all of it. Great job. As I said at the beginning of class, if you have questions about any of these sounds that we've covered today, about the IPA symbols, why, how they came to be, how they exist, how to use them, how to read the dictionary, leave me a comment. I'll cover it in a future class, or I'll let you know what video and what online course you can find those resources in. Scrolling back through our different types of sounds, you can learn a little bit more in our Sounds of English course about all of these different sounds and what these place of articulation labels and manner of articulation labels mean. And then, of course, back to our Vowel Quadrangle, which is, I think, one of the most useful tools for understanding English sounds, just because vowels are tricky in terms of how they're spelled. We have lots of different ways of spelling them. When you look in the dictionary, you're going to see the IPA symbol, one sound. And once you learn those, you can really have an organization system for understanding what you're supposed to be pronouncing, what you're hearing, what native speakers are using, and then how the spelling interacts with the sounds of English. I hope this was a useful lesson for you. Again, I'll be back again tomorrow with a Word of the Day class, and Saturday we'll have our live question and answer class. Check out more details in our online courses on speechmodification.com, as well as our free practice on the website. And do look at our community page here on YouTube. You can check out our homepage on the channel. We have lots of different playlists for the sounds of English, for the vowels of English, for some of these more challenging sounds. So you can get more into depth on some of the things you may have learned in this overview video learning about IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. Thanks so much for being a part of class today, leaving me your comments and questions, and looking forward to seeing you in our next class. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.